Hello everyone and welcome back to 20 Tactics with me, the Loremaster, and I'm here today to talk to you about getting the most out of your flying wizards. So the way we're going to break this down is we're going to try to think about defense and attack, and then I'll tie a lot of today's video into some others that we've already put into the 20 Tactics section, so I'm going to reference you back as we go through. So let's start by taking a look at our tabletop. As ever, I've got some pre-made scenarios here to illustrate all of the points we're going to be discussing. So Manfred von Carstein on his Hellsteed is going to be today's flying wizard for the purposes of our demonstrations. And I'm going to start by looking at some basics of defence. Now this will actually tie very well back into the video we did on cannon defence as well. So feel free to check that one out to back this up further with kind of more options than I'm going to discuss right now. But if we take a look at how I've deployed, so we can see that I'm up against some Empire, and that Empire have got a steam tank there, which has got a cannon, and I've got some Outriders there. Now these tactics that we're going to look at right now in terms of defending our flying wizard can be used with lots of types of flying wizards. So we're looking at monstrous cavalry, or actually infantry flying wizards to an extent as well. There aren't very many, but the few that there are, we can do a lot of this as well. So let's take a head down to the tabletop and see some of the things that I've done. So first things first, to defend against this cannon, I've done good old-fashioned classic here. I've put some monstrous infantry in front of my wizard, and this really is a staple. This defends against the enemy cannonball, gives me 2 models to soak up damage before it gets through. It also defends me though in combat against enemy flying units. Now if we imagine that our good friend Mr. Franz is right here with Galmarats, he's certainly a big problem for Manfred. He'll probably kill him in one turn. So by having them tucked just 1 inch away, I haven't just successfully defended him from the cannonball, or well, I haven't just reduced the chance the cannonball killing me, but I've completely cut off Karl Franz being able to charge him. Whereas if he's right back here, yeah, he's still defended from that cannonball, but he's certainly not defended from Mr. Franz, who could charge into the gap, as you could see. So it's just about making sure, I'll pop Mr. Franz right back here for now, that you're nice and tight behind those blocking units to protect yourself not only from cannons but also from combat. Now you'll see I've got some conventional shooting over here as well, the Outriders, which are just about in range. Now what I've done here is, because I'm cavalry unit type, I've ensured that my wizard, my flying wizard, is within 3 of this unit of cavalry here. Now if these were Black Knights and not Hex Wraiths, I could just simply join the unit. Because they're Hex Wraiths I can't, so I'm going to go 3 away to get that 4+ lookout sir. And I've also put myself again in hard cover. So we're thinking about units to block off for hard cover, we're thinking about lookout sirs, or just joining. Something I don't see people do enough with flying wizards is this as well. If we weren't fighting that cannon, we could simply join Manfred to the unit of Crypt Horrors, if he'll go on. Incompatible base size means he goes on the end, but he can't be picked out by conventional shooting like the repeater handguns. So to shoot at him, you're going to have to shoot at my unit of Crypt Horrors, which there's plenty of models and plenty of wounds in there. Manfred is going to be pretty safe from damage there too. So we've given ourselves a few different options there to defend ourselves from the enemy's shooting. You can do exactly the same thing with monstrous cavalry. If this was in fact an Imperial wizard on a Pegasus and we had a unit of Demigryph Knights here, you'd be getting the lookout sir that way, or you could join them onto a unit of monstrous cavalry if you were monstrous cavalry yourself, to give yourself a lookout sir that way, or as we said, the lookout sirs on 3s. So the monstrous cavalry option obviously gives us the lookout sir against the cannonball as well, which is really nice. If we were monstrous cav, again, if this was a unit of Black Knights and we joined him in, he'd be getting a 2+ lookout sir against that cannonball there. Even better if we joined him on this end, because now he's getting a lookout sir and the damage is having to go through. So these are the basic tactics that I want you to think about when defending that wizard at ranged, or from ranged assault. And I do include those flying charges as part of that ranged assault in a way, because they come from such a long distance away. You don't always see them coming. If you leave those loose gaps, if you leave those big loose gaps thinking I'm protected from the cannon, something can jump in there, and it's not ideal, it's dangerous for us. We don't want it. So this is the first key element, that defence. And I'm going to keep rolling that defence element along in terms of how we might position as well. So we now want to assault the enemy. We want to bring our wizard into the fray. There are, of course, a few ways that we can do this. We can simply move this entire block forward and keep the wizard tucked in exactly where he is, nice and safe. But we're not really getting the most out of his movement. We want to do that. He's got 20 inches. So the first thing we're always going to look for is the opportunity to involve pieces of terrain. This for us is a fantastic piece of terrain. The building provides us with impassable, it blocks line of sight, it covers our character very, very nicely. And something we need to remember, and I'm going to point you to the videos that I did on 20 Tactics for, say, Law of Death, which is the most common flying wizard you're going to see, is that quite a lot of spells aren't hampered by this building. You can hurl a magical vortex still. You can cast anything that's direct damage because you only need arc of sight, which means if we're looking here, kind of anything, see the laser, anything in this V shape is still very targetable. In fact, the only thing we're concerned about from this position is magic missiles. The vast majority of you, and the vast majority of spells in the game aren't magic missiles, and the vast majority of your flying wizards won't have magic missiles either. So, not a big stress. The fact that he can't see friendly troops here is also irrelevant, because if he wants to use augments, doesn't need line of sight, he just needs range. Not an issue. If he wants to use hexes, he can still hex any of these. Even if he was facing this direction, he could still hex these guys, because he doesn't need arc of sight to hex. So remember your spell types, it's crucial. You can use a piece of terrain like that to give you maximum protection. He's protected against the cannon, he's protected from being charged, because again he's right up against that piece of terrain if we tuck him right up against. And ultimately, he can still do the vast majority of his offensive damage. So, what else have I got things set up here? Let's assume this piece of terrain wasn't here. Is this still a good position for Manfred? Well, the short answer to that is yes, it's a fantastic position once again for our flying wizard. And the main reason, of course, being we're well out of arc of sight. And actually, if I go back to Mr. Franz, same angle, you can see out of arc of sight with him as well. I can't stress this enough. When you are moving your flying wizard, you need to think about having eyes in the back of your head. You need to check all these arcs of sight. Make sure you're absolutely sure. And something I like to do a lot is I'll say, so he's out of arc. Are we both agreeing he's out of arc? So that we are both clear. And if your opponent says, no, I don't think he is, then make sure that you adjust that and get it right and get it fair. We're not about using things like asking your opponent if they think you're out of arc as a way of gaining some sort of advantage. What we're doing is just making it clear that we're all on the same page. So let's move this a little further forward so we can use the next example. Again, let's not forget as well that when we move this wizard into those offensive positions, for example here, we can still move our hex wraiths. Fast cavalry, got a love bit of fast cavalry. We can still move units to give him a lookout, sir, just in case we get something wrong. In case there's a wizard that we didn't know about lurking. I mean, I haven't got one here. Hold on. Let's grab ourselves one. Got a nice light wizard here. Horrifying for the likes of Manfred, a light wizard. Terrifying. Suddenly we've got a light wizard in the mix. So that lookout, sir, is going to really help us. And just to remind you, at Triple Crown events, you get lookout sirs against those magic missile hits in the same way that you do with regular shooting. So just thinking about those tactics. Magic missiles can be a real risk for your flying wizards, and one of the best ways to combat that, if you're not taking a special character one, is think really seriously about things like finding ways to get magic resistance, or to get a really quality ward save, something like the Cloak of Twilight and Magic Resistance. You can get that combo on the same model. It's absolutely horrifyingly hideous, ladies and gentlemen. Really difficult to shift them then with a wizard, and that really helps because you can put Manfred here, driving the cameraman mad, moving things quickly, but you could simply reform these great swords like this, so that the light wizard can see, or of course he himself could just step out of the unit and position himself that way so that he can shoot Manfred. Not very cool. Okay, so we've got some really good ideas so far on getting the most out, thinking about our spell types and ensuring that actually we can use terrain and still get the spell types to go off. The vast majority of the spell types will still go off. We can still do the damage, even hiding ourselves. So, are there any other dangers? We've talked about shooting and making sure we're protecting against it. We've talked about magic missiles to an extent now. We've even talked about flying charges. Are there any others that we need to be really careful of? Well, the big one, ladies and gentlemen, is the humble random mover. So, if we had a setup similar to this, we might look and think to ourselves, lovely, you know what, Manfred, 20 inches, beautiful. We're going to fly him over, we're going to drop him in here. He's then going to use his magic, his death magic, to assassinate these characters. If these guys want to turn to face him as a unit, then they're going to show their rear to my army. This is fantastic tactical play for us. We've used the wizard to stretch our opponent out. So now he's got this horrible choice. Does he turn to face the wizard who's picking off characters and doing damage, or does he keep facing the aggressive front line? Can't stress how great a pressure tactic this can be, but we have made a hideous mistake in our application of it here, ladies and gentlemen, and that's because we haven't considered the random mover, which in his turn does this. Boop boop! That's going to be very loud because I was right next to the camera as I made that boop boop, ladies and gentlemen. Suddenly he's hit Manfred, and I can tell you that almost any wizard is not going to survive the charge of something like a steam tank. And similarly, if we had something like Hell Pit Abomination there, or if we had any number of other random movers, Mangler Squigs, we are in a lot of trouble. So we need to be really aware of the random mover. So what could we have done differently? Quite a lot we could have done differently actually, guys. With a conventional random mover that's got a square base like this one, when we did our fly into the gap, we could have simply flown here. Again, we're going to watch out for this arc of sight, so we're going to check it. Going to be really tidy in our play. That's lovely, we're out of it. The random mover now, because it has to pivot on the spot, it's got no way of hitting Manfred. As long as you're playing an event where virtual pivoting is not allowed, you're not going to have any questions or issues like that. So this has saved us. But imagine this was something like a Mangler Squig that's on a round base. That would be a really concern. That would be of real concern, because we can't simply redirect it in that way. So the answer this time would simply be to fly this side of the space. Base is too big to get through. If it's a Mangler, they're on a big round base. We've popped him in the same aggressive type of position, but we've protected him. We are somewhat vulnerable here to the steam tank's cannon still, so we'd have to consider ways that we might be able to do something about that. One of the ways could simply be to reform these into a dart and fly them along here, just so we've got some lookout sirs in case. But this was if it was a Mangler Squig. If it was a steam tank and it had a cannon, we would simply pop him here. He's safe from the arc of Karl Franz. This is now railroaded and blocked off, and we've done a fantastic job of ensuring that he's still going to be with us. And that's it really. Make sure you check out those other videos that I mentioned, the 20 Tactics for Law of Death, and that cannon defense video in particular will be very, very helpful. You could also check out the redirector video, the first 20 Tactics we did, which has got an element at the end of that about railroading, so you could get a little bit more precise on that as well. My final point on Flying Wizards would be, really think about the law of magic you're going to use. Law of Death's obviously really strong, and anything that's got short range, really offensively powerful spells or vortices can be a really great choice on a Flying Wizard. But spells like, laws like Law of Metal or Law of Heavens probably not going to be the best choice you've ever made. Laura Beast's another fantastic example for that. It doesn't have the synergy with the flying wizard. So I know we all talk about how great flying wizards are, but we need to just always temper that against this idea of, well, why are we using the flying wizard? And we've seen there are risks, so we need to mitigate those as best as we can. There's got to be a reward, and that reward is having access to those direct damages, those vortices and those hexes that will do the kind of damage and the aggressive play we want, whilst having the best opportunity to maximise the defence of the flying wizard. And that's it. Hope you found this video really helpful. I hope there's something in there that you've not thought of before, or a small nuance that you think, it's just reminded me of something in the back of my head. The Loremaster's still got it. And I look forward to seeing you all again on 20 Tactics. Make sure you head back to the Knights of the Realm mustering ground, where you can check out all of our other exclusive content. And I'll see you guys in about 4 weeks if you're watching this at the time of release. Remember to tag your friends and like, subscribe and share. Then head over to triplecrownwargaming.com and become a Knight of the Realm today.
What are you doing, mate?
You alright?
Do it for war!